I live for the simple things.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of Mayol Nerd, where we will be starting part 2 of our SAT ACT studies. And obviously on the screen, we will be doing part 1, reading and writing workout for the SAT, which is actually right after the introduction, which is why the part 2. So let's get started. So before we get started with our actual video today, I'd like to go over 3 steps that I use every time I sit down to take a test. And I definitely use these when I go to take something as big as the PSAT and then future SATs. So first I start with, I close my eyes and breathe with a purpose. So closing your eyes and breathing with a purpose means, obviously you close your eyes, but to breathe with a purpose means take a deep breath in and exhale slowly. So what I'm trying to say is think about your breathing. Make your breathing have a purpose. Don't think about anything else. Nothing else matters except for your breathing. So then once you accomplish that, then you can move on to step 2. Relax and calm your mind. This is a very important one because I am sometimes an anxious test taker, like I told you guys. And so relaxing and calming my mind and reassuring myself about the test always makes me feel better. And of course, personally, I will ask God for help. Step 3, become one with the test. Now, this one is probably the most ridiculous sounding out of all of them to you, but in order to, succeed on a test, you have to become one with it. You have to become the test. You cannot let the test trick you, especially with the 2 multiple choice answers that are really close to each other, but obviously one's not right. Well, that's why you have to become with the test. Don't let it fool you, because there's always a right answer and there's always a good way to get it, no matter what. Alright, so those are the 3 steps that I do, and if you try them before you go to a test, I promise you it will be very effective. And yeah. So now on to the actual thing that we'll be going over today. So we're going to be starting with our couple of topics in this part. Evidence-based reading. Your goal is to answer questions. They're too long. The passages, subject areas, other features. Well, if it ain't matter, then it doesn't matter now, does it? Passages, charts, tables, and graphs. And we will stop at the Princeton review method right here. Yeah, you can't really see that, but so that's what we're going to be doing today. So let's start with evidence-based reading. That, just if y'all are following along with your book, that will be page 16. So let's get started. Evidence-based reading. The reading section is long. You have 65 minutes to tackle 5 passages and 52 questions, and the passages aren't exactly drawn from what most would consider a relaxing beach read. That might sound like a recipe for a lot of frantic reading, but it doesn't have to be. Consider the questions below. Now, before I look at the questions, I'm here to tell y'all that this section here is one of the hard ones for me. I don't do well under stress, and that's something that I've been working on, but 65 minutes to do 52 questions and to read 5 passages can be done, and I'm about to show you guys. In line 14, blotted out most nearly means A, blemished, B, obscured, C, extinguished, or D, removed. And then number 6, the author mentions Sweden and Brazil in order to emphasize which point about the Krakatoa eruption. A, although the eruption was devastating in Krakatoa, there were no effects felt in other parts of the world. B, the volcanic eruptions were so powerful that it affected the climate of countries thousands of miles away. C. Local destruction in Krakatoa was enormous, but the destruction in Europe and South America was, if anything, greater. D. The explosion would have been even more destructive had it happened today. Did you guys notice something super helpful about question 5? Sure enough, the question actually tells you where to look for the answer. That means that instead of having to read the entire passage in hopes of finding the answer, you can focus on a much more manageable portion, something that looks more like this. We're talking about number 5. The eruption of Krakatoa sent clouds of ash and dust into the Earth's atmosphere to a height of 50 miles. The sun was blotted out for entirely 2 days within a 100-mile radius of the volcano. And Earth temperatures as far away as Sweden and Brazil were several degrees lower than average that year. So what this is trying to say to us is the question will sometimes give the location of where you need to be looking for the answer. And to tell you guys this, for the newbies who have never taken this test before, there are a lot of these in the first part of the test. So look out for those and know that if it literally tells you the line, then that's the place you need to look. But if I were to choose like which one it would be, I would personally choose B. And you guys let me know down in the comment section below if you think that I'm right or not. But where I was able to find this, line 14. Line 14. So I usually do this during a test, but I highlight line 14. That way I know exactly what I'm looking for and where it is. That way I don't have to that way it doesn't get all entangled with the other lines. It doesn't just look like another line, but it has purpose. Anyway, so let's move on. So of course you also might have noticed that question 6 doesn't contain a handy line reference. But while there isn't a line reference, question 6 does still provide a way to narrow down your search in the passage. It asked about Sweden and Brazil, 2 words that will likely stand out while skimming the passage. In fact, the portion of the passage you read for question 5 also mentions Sweden and Brazil. Even without a line reference, you could attack question 6 by using key words, it's very important right there, from the question. In addition to the fact that the questions in each passage are asked in roughly chronological order, to look for references to Sweden and Brazil in the portion of the passage after line 14. In other words, the answers to question 5 and 6 are located in specific places in the passage, and you don't have to read the entire passage to find the evidence you need to get them right. So that was actually one of my greatest downfalls on this test. One of the questions that I got the most wrong were actually in this portion of the test, and that was because I was always in a hurry trying to read this as fast as I can. And trying to find the answers, and so that never worked. So while the phrase evidence-based might sound like a lot of extra work, what it actually means is that the answers are in the passage and you can use the questions themselves to help you work efficiently to find the evidence and choose the correct answer. So if you guys are like me and y'all read through the passage basically 8 or 9 times really quick trying to find the answer, then this is a bad habit, and this is something that you need to work on. So I promise you will get a better score if you practice this right here. Anyway, your goal is to answer questions. No matter how much you read, the proctor will not be walking around the examination room saying, Jessica, excellent reading form. I'm giving you 20 extra points on your on your evidence-based reading score. The only way you get points in SAT evidence-based reading is by correctly answering questions. The sooner you get to the questions, the sooner you start earning points. For example, both of the questions on the previous page could be answered without reading the rest of the passage, which we didn't show you. In question 5, you needed to supply a word that would fit in the place of the quoted words blotted out. The correct answer was B. Okay, good, so I got it right. Obscured, because the volcanic ash filled the sky to the point that the sun's rays couldn't get through. Even if you had read the entire passage several times and made extensive notes, the answer to this question was based on only one thing: your understanding of the sentence in this paragraph. The correct answer to question 6, which asked us why the author brought up Sweden and Brazil, was B. In the context of this paragraph, the two countries were mentioned to show just how powerful the eruption had been. Again, even if you had memorized the entire passage, the only place to find the answer to this question was right here in this paragraph. I'm telling you guys, this is what brought my score down. This is why I did not make higher than a 1210, is because I always had to read the passage over and over and over again, trying to find the answer to the right one. And of course, after reading it 2 or 3 times, then I start freaking out, knowing that I'm going to run out of time, and then I start focusing on that, and then I lose my calm mind, and so it just ends up not working out well. So I'm telling you, this if this is a problem of yours, this is something you need to work on. So before I continue, this is page 18 for all y'all following in the book. These questions are pretty typical of the SAT in that they include either a line, reference, or an identification of the paragraph in which the answer can be found. And I told you guys that earlier. So for y'all newbies, get ready for this. There's going to be a lot of questions like number 5 that we just looked at. Most of the reading questions tell you where to look for the answer because they are arranged in chronological order. The answer to question 16 can be found somewhere between the answers to questions 15 and 17. Now, I mean, sometimes that's not correct, but most of the time it is. They're too long. Many students look at a passage of 500 to 750 words and feel defeated at the thought of trying to keep track of a passage that long. But the situation is much better than they think. Reading passages are actually just a series of paragraphs like the one you just read. You don't need to remember details of the entire passage at once. You just need to focus on the details of one section at a time as you answer the questions dealing with that information. Then you can move on to another section. So basically, this is very true. I have figured out that the passages in these tests are basically repeating themselves, and that's something that you need to know before you go take this test. Is sometimes you don't even need to read the whole thing because you get the gist of what's going on in the first and maybe the first 2 or the last 2 paragraphs or something like that. So don't stress out too much about what the whole thing is about. What you need to know is you still need to look for those questions, and you still need to tell what the answers are. That way you can go back and look at certain minor details. Like an example for this is all of these paragraphs that we're reading on this video are relatively the same. However, if you look at this one, you can tell that it's just a little bit different than the last paragraph or the paragraph before that. And then if the question's telling you to look for certain details, then you can come down to, like, we'll say this paragraph right here. Reading passages are actually just a series of paragraphs like the one you just read. So that could be the answer to a question. But what I'm saying is, if you're trying to get the gist of what the whole story's about, don't freak out about that, because most of this is the same thing. Like, the gist of all this is you're trying to make yourself better for the SAT. Anyway, let's move on. The passages. Subject areas. Because everybody's personal order of difficulty is different. Y'all know mine. It's important that you know what types of passages to expect on the test. This will allow you to use your time as efficiently as possible. The 5 passages will come from 3 subject areas and will consist of 1 U.S. world literature passage drawn from a classic or more recent work of literature, 2 history/social studies passages drawn from fields such as history, economics, sociology, and political science, and from primary historical documents. 2 science passages drawn from work in fields such as earth science, chemistry, and physics, and addressing concepts, information, and or experiments. A couple of the passages will also have additional features that can make them appear more intimidating. Just a little side note, the intimidation is very true. Dual passages. One of the history, social studies, or science passages will actually consist of 2 shorter passages on the same topic. Recent examples of these dual passages have given 2 views on the subject of mining in space, on the effect of new media on brain development, and on the rights of 18th century women. Whatever the subject matter of the dual passages you encounter, you should tackle them in the following order. Answer the questions that refer only to the first passage. Answer the questions that refer only to the second passage. Answer the questions that refer to both passages. Charts, tables, and graphs. 2 passages in the reading section will contain 1 or 2 of what the College Board calls informational graphics, which are charts, tables, and graphs. That means that 2 of the 4 history, social studies, and science passages will be accompanied by 1 or 2 figures that will provide additional information related to the passages. These passages will include a few questions that ask about the data presented in the graphics, either alone or in relation to the information in the passage. These figures might seem like they'll require more work, but the charts, tables, and graphs provided in the reading section and the questions about them are relatively straightforward. Guys, it's charts, tables, and graphs. At this age, I really hope you can, decipher what's in them. So, the bottom line is that neither dual passages nor charts, tables, and graphs should be cause for alarm, and passages that feature them will not necessarily be more difficult than the passages that don't. The one thing that I have to say about these history, science passages are sometimes they're actually kind of interesting, but you don't want to get too hooked up in them. But of course, you don't want to just be like, oh my god, this story is so stupid. You want to at least be somewhat interested or fake that you're interested in it. That way you can get a good read out of it. Now for the review. Practice the 3 steps to a smarter mind. The reading section is long, so make sure to look for questions that have inline or in paragraph number, we'll say 26, and keywords such as proper nouns. Don't reread the passage 50 times. Get the gist of the story and look for details through the questions. Be genuinely interested in what you are reading, and don't be afraid of charts, tables, or graphs. Well, I really appreciate y'all making it this far, and I really hope y'all learned something new today. And I will see you guys in the next episode of Mule Nerd.